I sit at the dining table in our new suburban home, watching the soft glow of twilight filter through the large bay windows. The polished wood of the table gleams under the gentle light of the lamp, and the subtle aroma of roasted chicken and herbs fills the air. It's one of those rare, perfect evenings where everything seems aligned, an ideal start in a place we now call home. My husband, Michael, and I share a quiet dinner, our voices low and our laughter soft, as if we're savoring each moment before it vanishes into the night. Outside, the neighborhood whispers of tranquility, the distant hum of cicadas providing an unexpected lullaby. Yet, even as I revel in this calm, an undercurrent of unease stirs within me. Michael's eyes wander off as he speaks, his response is curt and fleeting. He stirs his soup absent-mindedly, his mind seemingly far away from our conversation. At first, I chalk it up to the fatigue of the move, a temporary distraction after a long day of unpacking and settling into new routines. But as the evening wears on, small details begin to gnaw at my peace. A phone that buzzes more often than usual, a glance that lingers a moment too long on his phone screen, and his subtle habit of stepping away to take mysterious calls. I can't pinpoint the moment the perfect veneer started to crack. The dinner that once held promises of warmth and security now harbors silent questions that swirl in my mind. Every tiny, offhand remark or unusual pause seems to hint at something concealed beneath his composed demeanor. My heart, once buoyed by the promise of our new beginning, now begins to flutter with apprehension. I force myself to smile, to trust that this is merely the stress of change, yet the growing dissonance between his words and his actions plants a seed of doubt deep within me. As I push the thought aside, trying to reclaim the evening's serenity, the house itself seems to hold its breath, a silent witness to the quiet unraveling of what I believed to be our perfect life. In the days following that unsettling evening, a quiet tension began to seep into the fabric of our daily life. At first, the changes were subtle, a slight shift in Michael's tone during our morning coffee, the way his eyes avoided mine when I casually mentioned our plans for the weekend. It was as if a shadow had silently crept into our home, making itself at home among our routines. Every gesture and every pause carried a weight I couldn't ignore. I started to notice that the effortless camaraderie we once shared had given way to fleeting smiles and a deliberate distance. Michael's laughter, once spontaneous and warm, now sounded rehearsed, as if he were holding back a torrent of unspoken thoughts. His late-night departures, initially attributed to extra work, became more frequent, and the silence that greeted his return was far more profound than the tired quiet I'd expected. Each time he left, I felt a hollow pit of worry open inside me, a foreboding that something precious was being eroded. The first time I caught him glancing at his phone with a furtive look, my heart sank. It wasn't the device itself, but the way he clutched it as if it were a secret he wasn't ready to share. I tried to dismiss it as mere distraction, a momentary lapse in an otherwise predictable day. But as these moments multiplied, so did the unease. Every little detail, a hurried whisper in the hallway, a hastily closed door, the way he lingered by his study, fed the growing suspicion that the perfect life I'd built was crumbling under the weight of hidden truths. I began to meticulously observe and record these peculiarities in my mind, cataloging each behavior that deviated from the norm. The disparity between his casual reassurances and his evasive actions became a silent conversation in itself, a conversation that hinted at secrets lurking behind closed doors. My days, once filled with simple joys and uncomplicated routines, were now marked by the persistent echo of doubt. I wondered how deeply these unspoken signals were etched into our shared life, and whether the man I loved was gradually slipping away into a realm I could no longer reach. In the quiet solitude of our new home, amidst its modern comforts and carefully chosen decor, I was left grappling with a single, unyielding question. When did our familiar world begin to unravel, and what truths lay hidden in Michael's unguarded moments? As days turned into a relentless stream of disquiet, I found myself becoming an unintentional detective in my own home. Every moment that Michael spent cloaked in secrecy added another layer to the mystery I was slowly piecing together. I began to document these anomalies, not with a digital recorder or overt surveillance, but with a quiet, desperate mindfulness that recorded every whispered conversation, every furtive glance, and every unexplained absence. It was as if my life had transformed into a delicate puzzle where each fragment, no matter how inconsequential, held the potential to reveal a hidden truth. I noticed a pattern emerging in the small details of our everyday existence. His phone, always within reach yet always shrouded in mystery, began to tell its own story. There were missed calls from unknown numbers and texts that arrived at odd hours. I even observed that his favorite book, once left open on the coffee table, was now always tucked away in his study. It wasn't simply the act of concealment, it was the deliberate orchestration of a narrative he was building without me. Late one evening, driven by a mixture of anxiety and determination, I retraced his steps through our neighborhood. I visited the coffee shop where he claimed to meet clients, the quiet park bench he favored for a solitary moment of respite, and even a dimly lit restaurant that seemed far too intimate for a routine business meeting. With each stop, my heart pounded louder, each unanswered question deepening the abyss of uncertainty. Neighbors offered vague comments, a nod here, a sympathetic smile there, yet nothing concrete emerged. Only an increasing sense that I was witnessing the slow disintegration of our shared reality. Back home, I meticulously rearranged the pieces of evidence like a mosaic. Every offhand remark, every unexpected phone call, every hesitance in his tone was carefully catalogued in the recesses of my mind. I was aware that this silent investigation was taking a toll on me, yet the need for truth was stronger than any lingering fear. It was a journey into the unknown, a brave confrontation with the possibility that the foundation of our lives had been built on lies, and with each piece I collected, the picture grew ever more unsettling, urging me to uncover what lay hidden beneath the layers of Michael's carefully constructed facade. One fateful evening, as the dusk painted the sky in muted shades of orange and gray, I found myself returning home earlier than usual. The house, usually a sanctuary of calm, seemed to pulsate with an unfamiliar tension. I had a vague intuition that tonight might unravel the tangled threads of uncertainty that had long plagued my thoughts. As I stepped through the doorway, I was met not by the gentle hum of our evening routine, but by an eerie silence that echoed with unspoken confessions. Guided by an impulse I could neither resist nor fully understand, I moved quietly down the hallway. The soft murmur of conversation caught my attention, a conversation that didn't belong to the familiar cadence of my family life. Peeking through the slightly ajar door of our study, my heart pounded with a mixture of dread and desperate hope. There, illuminated by the harsh light of a desk lamp, was Michael. His posture was unusually animated, his eyes alight with a secret that was no longer his alone. And beside him stood Amanda, a woman whose presence radiated both warmth and mystery. Time seemed to freeze in that instant, as every carefully constructed illusion of our shared life shattered into 1,000 fragments. The sight was undeniable. Michael's affectionate gestures towards Amanda, the whispered laughter, and the lingering touch that spoke of intimacy beyond the confines of friendship. In that moment, the meticulously gathered fragments of doubt coalesced into a painful clarity. The betrayal was not a figment of my overactive imagination, but a stark, brutal reality that left me trembling on the threshold of my own home. Overwhelmed by a rush of emotions, betrayal, sorrow, and an aching numbness, I slowly backed away, each step weighted with the gravity of what I had just witnessed. The truth, so long concealed behind hushed phone calls and evasive glances, had finally emerged from the shadows. The perfect veneer of our new beginning was irreparably marred by a betrayal that cut deeper than I ever anticipated. That night, as the cool air whispered through the cracks of my shattered illusions, I realized that my world had irrevocably changed. The discovery left me with a torrent of unanswered questions and a heart that had to learn anew how to beat without the steady rhythm of trust. In the days following that shattering confrontation, a restless determination took hold of me. The painful vision of Michael and Amanda had ignited a need to confirm every whispered suspicion and every unexplained secret. I could no longer rely solely on fleeting observations or half-heard conversations. I needed tangible proof to anchor the storm of emotions swirling within me. Driven by both desperation and a steely resolve, I embarked on a solitary journey through the very corners of our neighborhood that had silently borne witness to the betrayal. I retraced Michael's familiar routes, venturing into the dimly lit streets and quiet cafes where his presence had grown increasingly elusive. My steps carried me to that quaint coffee shop, where the soft murmur of other patrons now resonated with a secret I yearned to uncover. I sat quietly in a shadowed corner, watching as Michael's reflection, though momentarily blurred by the steam rising from my untouched cup, appeared to merge with that of a woman who, from subtle cues and lingering glances, could only be Amanda. At another stop, a modest bistro with an ambiance of subdued charm, I discreetly inquired with a gentle waiter who recalled Michael's frequent visits. His hesitant recollections spoke of whispered conversations over half-finished meals and a familiar pattern of secretive meetings that spanned several weeks. Each remark, each half-truth from strangers unknowingly entangled in my personal narrative, added a weighty confirmation to my growing archive of evidence. As I pieced together these scattered fragments of truth, the reality of Michael's deception crystallized before me. It was not the result of a singular misstep or a misunderstood signal. It was a calculated divergence from the life I thought we shared. With each conversation, every quiet nod of acknowledgement, and the subtle but unmistakable signs of intimacy between Michael and Amanda in various corners of our small town, the picture became clearer and more inescapable. Returning home each evening, I found no solace in our silent walls. Instead, the weight of these revelations pressed on my chest like an inescapable verdict. The days of doubt and fear were over. Now stood a resolute pursuit of truth. The journey was painful and laced with sorrow, yet it was the only path that promised clarity, a path I had to walk alone to reclaim the integrity of my own narrative. The air in our home grew thick with a tension that no longer allowed me to remain silent. The day had stretched endlessly, every moment chiseled by the agony of uncertainty and betrayal, until finally I reached the point where avoidance was no longer an option. As evening descended with an ominous quiet, I found Michael in the living room, a room that once resonated with our shared laughter, but now felt like a stage set for an inevitable reckoning. I sat across from him, my hands trembling yet determined, and began to ask the questions that had haunted me for weeks. There was no grand crescendo in my voice, only a measured calm that belied the tumult inside me. "Michael," I said softly, "I need you to be honest with me. I've seen the signs, the whispers of your double life. Please, tell me everything." His eyes darted away, a storm of emotions crossing his face in quick, unreadable flashes. For what seemed like an eternity, silence reigned as he wrestled with the weight of his own deception. Then, in a voice stripped of pretense, he confessed. The confession was a cascade of sorrow and regret, revealing a series of decisions made in secret, late-night meetings, hushed conversations in dimly lit corners, and the growing intimacy with Amanda that had slowly eroded the foundation of our marriage. His words fell between us like fragments of a broken promise, each syllable a stark reminder of the love we once nurtured. As the truth spilled forth, I felt a torrent of emotions crash over me. Betrayal, grief, anger, and an overwhelming sense of loss. Michael's tone, heavy with remorse, could not bridge the chasm that had opened between us. Every detail of his account served as an indictment, a confirmation that the perfect life we had begun to build was irrevocably marred by deceit. In that charged moment, the room seemed to close in around us. The soft hum of the old clock on the wall punctuated the gravity of our conversation, each tick a metronome to the collapse of our shared illusions. I realized then that the confrontation was not just about uncovering the truth, it was about reclaiming my identity and forging a future free from pretense. The conversation left me raw, my heart splintered, but also resolute in the need to face the painful reality head-on. There, amidst the ruins of our shattered trust, I found a fierce clarity. A decision that the path ahead, no matter how daunting, must be navigated with honesty and strength. In the silent aftermath of the explosive confrontation, I found myself standing at a crossroads where every decision seemed to pulse with the weight of the future. Days turned into long nights of introspection as I sat in the solitude of our once-shared sanctuary. The walls echoed with memories, both tender and treacherous, and each familiar corner of the house morphed into a gallery of moments that now held bittersweet lessons. Every sunrise brought with it a quiet resolve to seek a truth beyond the betrayal. I began to explore parts of myself that had long been overshadowed by the roles of wife and mother. I discovered a quiet strength buried beneath layers of doubt and heartache. I took to long walks in the early morning when the world was still draped in the calm of pre-dawn silence, each step a silent meditation on what I truly desired for my future. The chirping of birds and the rustle of leaves became the chorus of my new awakening, a reminder that nature in its infinite cycle offered both an ending and a promise of renewal. Conversations with friends and the occasional session with a compassionate counselor slowly began to stitch together the fragments of my shattered confidence. In these exchanges, I unearthed insights about my own aspirations and the realization that my identity was not defined solely by the bonds of a broken relationship. I began jotting down my thoughts, letting ink and paper serve as conduits for the flood of emotions that had long been imprisoned within. With every word, I reclaimed a piece of myself, my hopes, dreams, and the vision of a life where honesty and self-respect would light my way forward. I also reconnected with the creative passions of my youth, sketching, writing, and even dancing to the gentle rhythms of an old record player. These small acts of reclaiming joy were not just distractions, they were deliberate steps towards redefining what my life could be. The house, once a mausoleum of silent grievances, slowly began to transform into a canvas of personal renaissance. In the midst of all this transformation, I stood at the threshold of a new beginning. The painful memories of betrayal no longer had the same power to define me. Instead, they fueled a burning desire to rebuild my life on my own terms. At this crucial juncture, every decision felt like a step towards embracing a future where I could be honest with myself, free from the shackles of deceit, and daring enough to reimagine the contours of my happiness. In the quiet aftermath of painful revelations and heart-wrenching decisions, I finally found myself at the brink of a new beginning. The storm of betrayal had passed, leaving behind a landscape scarred yet strangely fertile, a place where the seeds of renewal could be sown. The echoes of our past reverberated softly through the hallways of our home, but they no longer dictated my future. Instead, I chose to see them as lessons, harsh but essential, that had forged a strength I never knew I possessed. Each morning, as sunlight crept through the window and kissed the worn floors of our living room, I felt a gentle invitation to rebuild not only the space around me but the space within me as well. I began by reclaiming the small, forgotten moments that once filled my days with joy: a quiet cup of tea on the balcony, the scratch of a pencil against paper in a well-worn journal, and the rhythmic pulse of my own heart echoing in solitude. These simple acts became powerful affirmations of my resilience and a testament to my unwavering commitment to self-care. I reached out to old friends and new counselors, weaving a network of support that nurtured my healing process. Their voices, warm and empathetic, reminded me that while the pain of betrayal was real and deep, it did not define me. Slowly, I embraced the creative pursuits that had once brought me solace, painting vivid canvases of imagined futures, writing stories that transcended the wounds of my past, and dancing freely in the dim light of twilight. Each act of creativity was an act of defiance against despair, a step toward a future where authenticity reigned over illusion. In the mirror, I saw not the reflection of a broken heart, but of a woman reborn, strong, determined, and fiercely aware of her own worth. The journey ahead was uncertain, and the road to healing would undoubtedly have its share of obstacles. Yet, as I stepped forward into this uncharted territory, I carried with me the unshakable truth that from the ashes of betrayal can emerge a life more genuine, more vibrant, and more beautifully mine.